So I so yeah, I'm thinking a lot about a lot of this all this racial stuff, and it's something that is like something that I care about, and that I've for a long time wanted to help solve, to help different races, like empower, different races, and especially black people. That I think they tend to be on like um, I guess like the bottom of the barrel. I think it sucks, and um, there's a lot to it, and you know uh, there's a lot to it in America, but basically, like, um, I I had this thought, and I was thinking just this one night. I was thinking about the verse, the Great Commission verse of where Jesus said, "Go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and teaching them everything I've taught you." And the part where he says all nations really just kind of like stuck out to me that night, and I was just like on the bed thinking, and it was crazy because like I think Jesus was very intentional about saying all nations. I think he could have said like go to make disciples everywhere you go, whatever, but he was very intentional. He said all nations, um, and and there is actually another verse in Revelation where it tells you that there's this multitude of people from every nation, tribe, and tongue, basically just in heaven worshiping God, and it's like saying without number. And so after hearing that, thinking about it, I was like, oh shoot, like we're going through racial problems right now, and I think it's hard because I've been trying to process through the protests and these police shootings, or just police, black people dying at the hands of police, and processing through like the reasons, and just because I think it's hard because I feel like there's a stigma of like you having to like there's like a socially acceptable way to approach it of like I don't know, protesting or saying Black Lives Matter, or I don't know, it kind of feels just like there's almost like an expectation, which I think is bad because I feel like it's just like it's just like a social pressure to be like politically correct, or to be to care about things. But I think, is it rooted in something that really that is like a conviction, that is a deep desire to see change, and so going back to the verse, he said all nations. I think that God's heart is to save all people, you know what I mean, and um and and so like a couple weeks ago I had this thought, like, are black people human? And I think part of it stemmed from I looked like a year ago or something. I looked into the Declaration of Independence, and I was blown away by the profoundness of that document, because it just states, it starts with the premise, and then it goes on to list the reasons why they're separating from the British Empire. But it states almost like this statement to address like let's establish this truth that we hold dear, and then we're going to go into why we want to establish this nation outside of Britain, Great Britain. And so basically the gist of it, or what really just kind of slapped me in the face, was like, we find these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and all are endowed with some inalienable rights, which is basically something that you shouldn't or cannot take away. And I think it basically states those as life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And I don't know if it's like saying it's all of it, but it's kind of like summarizing it. And and it's crazy establishing that. But back then, I think there was like something I was coming across. I don't know who was telling me about it, but even the founding fathers, there's a claim that they didn't even believe that black people were human. And so I don't know if honestly, part of me doesn't know if that's true. I mean, I don't know. I wish there was more confirmation about that. I mean, maybe some of it could have been true, or I don't know. But if we take it for face value and we apply it to all men, including black people, it's an incredible document. But it's hard to think about. Yeah, if they didn't believe black people were human, it kind of like takes away the credibility of the document. But so anyways, in this thought I had was like, are black people human? And it was like, it's kind of like one of those thoughts you just like don't want to have and you feel ashamed about, and so you kind of just like throw it out like, that's not true, or you kind of like try to combat it with, okay, of course black people are human, or something like that. Or even thinking about the biological part of it, where black people eat, sleep, drink, create, we do all the same things as quote unquote white people or Asian, or the list goes on. Any kind of race you can think of, we all kind of do the same. So how can you bring that? But I think there was people at that time who justified slavery by saying that black people were, I think it's like 2/3 human or something like that. Or yeah, I think there was like evolutionary stuff that is a whole long thing. But basically talking about how I was kind of dealing with the thought, I just kind of kept trying to throw it under, ignore it, or respond to it like with good thoughts, quote unquote. But finally, I finally just like stopped, and I think I just like gave it to God, or at least I just kind of like addressed it. I think I was talking to God at the time, but I was just like, it's almost like I gave it up. Like I was like, all right, I'm thinking this thought. Like I wasn't trying to deny that I was having the thought, but that I was having the thought, and I can't remember right now, but I think I was just like, God, like I'm having this thought, or yeah, I'm having this thought. And I remember the first thought that I had, first things I remember thinking though, I mean, I feel like more relaxed. I think I remember that. I just feel like, oh man, it feels good to accept that I'm just thinking it instead of trying to like ignore it or give a counter, but just accept it and try to like let God have it and pray through it. But the first thought I had was like, oh, then that means that I'm half human, or there's debate on how black I am, but my dad's black and he might be something else. But the thought was like, oh yeah, so that means I'm half human. And I was thinking like, it's kind of cool in a way. But if it were true, like, oh, black people are, whether they're some superior race or they're like gods, or like more vampires or something like that. Thinking it, like, but it wasn't positive back then. It was negative. But basically, like, I had that thought, and I was like, oh, but like, it wasn't like I thought of it like, oh yeah, I went into this deep thought of like, oh yeah, maybe black people are this superhuman race or something like that. It was more like I just kind of like it made me think of like how ridiculous that sounds, to think that black people are not human. and there's this part of you that like wants to know, is it true, or like questions it. But I think it's just kind of crazy because I was kind of scared to address it, partly because I think I just felt scared of like being accepted, even though I wasn't even talking to anybody about it. It was just in myself. Like I was even scared to even talk to God about it, or to admit it to myself even. And that's kind of a crazy thing to think about. But basically, like I just addressed it, and I thought it's kind of ridiculous. You think about like, so I'm half human, basically. What you're trying to say, like can humans have kids with dogs or horses? Have we ever seen that? No. So it's kind of just like you think about, oh, it's ridiculous. So all that to say, I think that God's good. I think that I think it was good because to kind of just like put it in perspective of like, of course black people are human. And I think there's even like, even in my mind, I'm thinking like, are they, or could that be true that they're not? And I think it's not bad to question truth, but if we look at the Bible, and even just going off that verse, it says that like that to disciple all nations, like God didn't leave any nation out. He meant all humans, like, or he could have said except for these people, but he didn't. And I think for there to be a scientific claim back then, or a scientific pursuit to prove or to justify oppression, basically that was the reason, by saying that black people aren't human, it's horrible. It's demonic even. And I just want to say black people are human. I'm not half human. I'm full 100% human. I think it's a powerful thing, because something that I think God's been bringing my attention to is that we are created in His image. And I think that specific atrocity of trying to question the humanity of black people is it's a direct attack on that verse that says that God, that we are made in His image. And I think that's a beautiful thing, to be made in His image. Because I think it means a lot of things. I think it has to do with the fact that we can create, the fact that we communicate, the fact that we can perceive and ponder and think and worship and be conscious and create all these crazy, amazing things. I think all that has to do with, because we are creating God's image. And I think it's so awesome that we are. And so I think all that to say, and even I want to go deeper into that, but all that to say, I think God just addressed it like, black people are human. I think He just said it. Like, I think that's what He's trying to say. Like, like your thought, that ideology is ridiculous, because if so, like, you're only half human, and that doesn't make any sense. But all that to say, I say that because I think it matters how we approach these racial issues. And I think there's a way that we could approach it, of saying, like I was trying to do at the beginning, of like, oh, that's not true, or of course black people are human, or of course Black Lives Matter, or of course those cops shouldn't have shot them. And I think I don't think that's the answer to go and say just like address it, like, or to just ignore it, or to just try to throw some good thoughts at it. I think we really need to like be honest with ourselves and say, um, like I'm struggling with this, or like I'm struggling with this thought process, and I don't really necessarily know, like I just don't want to have it. But I think that the best thing to do is not to just ignore it or just try to combat it. It's to just acknowledge that it's there, and to bring it before God and say, be honest with yourself and be honest with God, because He's safe. And I think it sucks because I feel like part of the reason, honestly, I feel like that thought is unsafe in society is because of society. It's because I think there's this spirit out there that's like putting people down for not having an opinion that's accepted by, I don't want to say the majority, but just certain things that is acceptable in society, and like racism not acceptable, which it shouldn't be, but neither should abortion, and neither should homosexuality. And so but the same people that would say racism is not acceptable is the same people that would say abortion is okay and homosexuality is okay. And so I think there's a stigma of like, I can't even to myself, like I think there's a pressure on society. I mean, part of it is just maybe my flesh, my sin, not being like, not wanting to like just be honest with myself. But I think there's also society pressure that if you say certain things that you're not accepted. And so yeah, so I think there's a pressure to not be honest with yourself and to address it, as opposed to just like just ignore it, reject it, it's not true, instead of like, okay, let's process through this, let's see, let's debunk this and see and put it in perspective of if is it true, and so yeah, so going full circle, I guess I just wanted to say that I think that that the solution to racism, I really believe, is ultimately Jesus, but is ultimately the desire. I guess I was trying to say, like, being honest with ourselves about if we're racist, because racism comes in all different forms. And even like myself, I think that dealing with that racial thing was like something I was struggling with, and I think it was a form of racism in me, but I needed to address it. And I think the best way we can approach it is to acknowledge that we struggle with it, and then ultimately, as His church, we need to like go after everybody, not just some people who are comfortable with. And I think something I feel like God's really put in my heart is like, I think it's a place of intimacy. You know what I mean? I think not approaching it as like, oh, let's just fix racial problems, or oh, let's just change the laws, and even the laws, like a lot of them have been changed for Black people. But I think maybe now more than ever, I think it needs to come to a place of like, of intimacy, of wanting to get to know each other, even if that's your wife or your son or your next door neighbor, or even somebody you play with. I know sometimes there's people that I like I feel like I should wrap this up, but all that to say, I'm just trying to say that I think that maybe I just kind of want to start that thought process of, I guess, what does that look like? But for me, it seemed like just kind of acknowledging it and being honest with myself, and then I guess ultimately with that verse, making disciples of all nations, I think it's really, I think the church needs to step up, and we need to be, we need to, and I guess I do want to wrap it up, but I did want to say that it does start with a place of intimacy. I think it's like when I think about these problems, I think a lot of it stems from maybe black people. I said black people first, whatever. Not trying to have a relationship with white people, and white people trying not to have a relationship with black people. I think there's like when segregation happens, then I think problems happen because misunderstanding happens, and then I think ultimately hatred can happen. I think a lot of problems can root from not trying to understand or not trying to like get to know somebody who's of a different race, or get to know somebody who or who's different in some other way. And I think that's what that verse ultimately, I think that's discipleship. I think it really has to do with, a big part of it is just like getting to know people, understanding how to love people, understanding how to make people's lives better, understanding how to encourage people to know God more. And I think that as a church that we need to be that. So yeah.